Welcome to another episode from EduExcel. I'm your host Nirmala Thakur and I bring today the views on female education by Lala Lajpat Rai. We shine a light on Lala Lajpat Rai, one of India's fearless freedom fighters and social reformers, famously known as the Lion of Punjab. Beyond his role in India's independence, Rai was a passionate advocate for female education, a cause he believed was essential for the nation's true progress. Lajpat Rai understood that empowering women through education was not just a social obligation but a strategic necessity. He said, your women are your makers. Save them and educate them. He recognized that educated women become the backbone of healthy families, enlightened communities, and a strong nation. In an era where many resisted educating girls, Rai stood firmly against regressive traditions that hindered girls from receiving equal educational opportunities. He argued that an educated woman uplifts her entire family and society. By ensuring girls had access to schools and learning, he envisioned breaking cycles of poverty and ignorance. His advocacy was rooted in the belief that only a nation where both boys and girls are equally educated could achieve lasting freedom and prosperity. Lala Lajpat Rai's fight for women's education remains an inspiring legacy, a call to action for all to support gender equality in education. As we reflect on his vision, let us remember educating a girl child is not just an investment in her future, but a giant leap towards a just and progressive society. Thank you for joining this conversation on a topic that is as urgent now as it was in Lala Lajpat Rai's time. Female education. On the question of female education, Lajpat Rai pointed out that India had a widespread system of women education in India throughout the ages, but the education of women came to a sorrowful state with the advent of the English people as the rulers of the country. They stopped even religious education, the most popular medium of female education, in the name of secularism. He contrasted the lot of Indian women with the examples of the women of the USA who managed the child welfare agencies as well as religious and ethical agencies and controlled school education, including most of the grammar schools, that is, the eight grade elementary schools, which were almost exclusively staffed and run by women. He diagnosed that the prejudices and the customs of the country were all arrayed against the education of girls. He felt it would require a great advance in the education of males before the education of females could make a perceptible progress. He maintained that the spread of education among males had some strong and important inducements to back it, while the education of girls did not necessarily derive any support from the similar motivations for education, hence the gap between the progress in the education of boys and that of the girls. On the question of how to accelerate this progress, he asserted the answers would depend upon the vast spread of higher education among the males and the destruction of those age old prejudices. Notwithstanding the inducements of many scholarships and prizes, he argued a government which had crores of rupees in its treasury and was prepared to spend a portion on education had not by then succeeded in establishing a single high school or college for girls, thereby showing that, in its opinion too, such an important work was dependent on the spread of education among menfolk first. Citing statistics, he further said that Bengal showed a score of two only, one college and one high school for girls. The latter was an unaided institution maintained by Brahmos, and the former a college, expenses of which were borne by the state. The latter was started as late as in 1891 to 92 and the former in 1892 to 93. 89 scholars with a total expenditure of over rupees 35,000 afforded a sad commentary on the progress of higher education among females in Bengal. After more than a century of high education, with more than 2 dozen of colleges for boys and with its millionaires, wealthy and public spirited zamindars, rajas and maharajas, after more than half a century's work of the Brahmo Samaj, how strangely the apostles of female education in Bengal succeeded in establishing a high school in 1891 to 92, where 35,000 rupees a year, presumably it was not expressly stated therein, were spent upon providing education to 89 scholars. Proportionate to the progress of higher education in males, Bengal should have spent several lakhs a year on the education of girls and should have shown a more hopeful record. Likewise, so far as the Bethune College was concerned, it was not established by the government. The generosity of an Englishman found out sufficient money for its starting. Then a benevolent Governor General maintained it so long as he could by his private purse and subsequently exerted his influence in getting the charge transferred to the state. It was started in 1849 and took full 43 years to show a roll of 20 scholars in its college department. Turning to the Bombay Presidency, a girls' high school was said to have established at Pune in 1884 with an expenditure of Rs 17,000, presumably a year, on an attendance of 69 girls. This again was an aided institution. No figures were given of the high school attached to the Mahalakshmi Female Training College at Ahmedabad, nor was it stated who maintained it. With this, perhaps, was the end of the long list of high schools for the education of girls in India. Notwithstanding these instances, he found the movement of the proposed Kanya Mahavidyalaya being yet premature in the Punjab, though he was prepared to agree with the contention that practicable noble schemes might thoughtfully be devised according to local needs to impart higher education to girls as they advance in scholastic training. No advocate of the policy of sit silent till opportunity forces itself upon you. He was always for an advance, but for sure a steady advance which might be consistent with the interests of education in general of both boys and girls. That of the former most, in his opinion, in the peculiar circumstances of their colonial situation, should precede that of the latter as a class. Sufficient primary education of the latter as a class must be assured before they proceeded to spend out their meager means to the higher education of a few of them. As we reflect on Lala Lajpat Rai's tireless efforts championing female education, it is clear that his vision remains profoundly relevant today. His belief that educating girls is fundamental to a nation's progress guides Indian education reforms even now. The NEP 2020 embraces this spirit by striving to create an equitable education system where every girl and boy has the opportunity to thrive. It reminds us that the cause Rai fought for nearly a century ago must continue with renewed vigor to educate our women not only as caretakers but as empowered contributors to nation building. In honoring his legacy, we commit ourselves to the ongoing work of ensuring education unlocks potential, breaks barriers, and builds a brighter future for all.